Peter Obi took to the streets of Abuja on April 8, 2026, not to campaign, not to rally voters, but to protest the very electoral body that is supposed to conduct the election he wants to win. Let that land for a second. 9 months before the 2027 election, the man with arguably the most passionate supporter base in Nigerian politics is standing in Maitama, holding placards demanding INEC's chairman resign because the platform he needs to run on might be legally dead before the campaign even begins. Here's the question nobody is asking loudly enough. What if Peter Obi's biggest threat to becoming president is not Tinubu, not the APC, and not rigging, but the protest happening inside his own coalition? Stay with me, because the answer to that question changes everything about how you should be reading this 2027 race. Before we go deeper, if you're just finding Naija Newsfeed, welcome. This channel exists to break down what is really happening in Nigerian politics without the noise, without the spin, and without any side. Just the facts, the strategy, and what it actually means for Nigeria. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications, because this one gets very interesting very fast, and I need you here for every episode. Let's set the scene properly. Peter Obi, as most of you know, ran for president in 2023 under the Labour Party banner. He got over 6 million votes, a number that shocked the political establishment, and despite the outcome in court, the movement he built, the Obidient movement, did not go away. It grew. Fast forward to 2025, Labour Party implodes from the inside. The feud between Obi and Labour Party chairman Julius Abure became public and bitter. By February 2026, Obi had formally launched Operation Rescue Nigeria and aligned himself with the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, a coalition that brought together some of the biggest opposition figures in the country: Atiku Abubakar, Rabiu Kwankwaso, David Mark, Rauf Aregbesola, Rotimi Amechi, and others. The idea was straightforward: unite the opposition under one platform, pool the votes, and beat Tinubu. But then came April 1st, 2026, April Fool's Day. Except what happened was no joke. INEC, the Independent Electoral Commission, announced that it was removing the ADC National Working Committee led by David Mark from its official records. The commission cited a Court of Appeal judgment in Appeal number CA/ABJ/145/2026, a ruling that arose from a leadership dispute inside the ADC itself. A rival faction, led by a man named Nafiu Bala Gombe, had gone to court claiming he should be the acting chairman. INEC, citing the court order, said it no longer knows who is legally running the ADC. 2 days later, April 2, the Obidient movement declared a nationwide protest. 6 days after that, April 8, Peter Obi, Atiku Abubakar, Kwankwaso, Aregbesola, Amechi, Tambuwal, David Mark, and Dino Melaye physically marched through the streets of Abuja under the banner #OccupyINEC. That is where we are, and the implications run very deep. Now let's talk about the rules of the game, because this is where it gets complicated. Under the Electoral Act, political parties must file specific documentation within defined legal windows ahead of the 2027 election. We are talking about things like nominating candidates, submitting lists, and conducting primaries within INEC's mandatory timelines. One of the most critical is a 21-day notice period before key party activities. Here's the problem. If INEC does not recognize a party's leadership, that party cannot file valid correspondence with the Commission. And if they cannot file valid correspondence, they cannot conduct a legally recognized presidential primary. And if they cannot do that, no candidate gets a presidential slot. The ADC pointed this out directly in their statement after the protest. They said that INEC's decision, while appearing procedural on the surface, creates a direct and dangerous conflict with Electoral Act timelines. Now, INEC's position is that it is simply following a court order. The Court of Appeal told it to maintain the status quo. But here is the gray area that the ADC and Obidient movement are exploiting politically. Is INEC interpreting that court order too broadly? The court said maintain the status quo, but whose status quo? The David Mark faction argues they were the legitimate recognized leadership before the court case even started. So how does de-recognizing Mark maintain any status quo? This is not just a legal argument, it is a battle over who controls the only viable opposition platform with 9 months to go. There are 2 courts involved, the Court of Appeal, which triggered the crisis, and a federal court in Abuja, where the final determination must come. Until that lower court rules, the ADC is in a kind of legal limbo, and Peter Obi, the man who wants to be president, is standing in the middle.
Here is something I want you to hold in your mind while we go through this section. The party that is crumbling right now, the ADC, is the 3rd opposition platform Peter Obi has been associated with heading into 2027. He was in PDP, left for Labour Party, built LP into a force, then left LP for ADC. 3 platforms, 1 man. What does that tell you? Now, who benefits from the ADC being in legal chaos right now? The most obvious answer is President Tinubu and the APC. If the opposition cannot agree on a platform, cannot conduct a valid primary, and cannot present a unified candidate, the APC does not need to steal an election. The opposition will have lost it before a single vote is cast. But let's go deeper, because that answer is too easy. The Atiku dimension. Atiku Abubakar has been chasing the presidency since 2003. He is 78 years old. This is almost certainly his last shot. Within the ADC coalition, there has been a fundamental tension. Obi wants to be the presidential candidate. Atiku also wants to be the presidential candidate. Both men are in the same party. Both have massive support bases, and both have refused to play second fiddle. When Obi was asked on an X space whether he would take a deputy role to Atiku, his answer was nuanced, but his camp later released a statement making clear no joint ticket. Obi will run as the principal or not at all. That single fact is a structural crisis inside the coalition because you cannot have 2 presidential ambitions in one party without one of them eventually breaking the alliance apart. The Kwankwaso card. Then Rabiu Kwankwaso joins the ADC in March 2026 at the Kano rally. Kwankwaso has an iron grip on Kano, one of the most vote-rich states in Nigeria. His entry was supposed to add northern weight to the coalition, but Kwankwaso also has presidential ambitions of his own. So now you have Obi, Atiku, and Kwankwaso, 3 men who have all run for or seriously considered running for president in one party, and INEC says it doesn't know who is legally running that party. The silent players. The ABC leadership crisis traces back to a faction, the Nafiu Bala Gombe group, that went to court to unseat David Mark. Who is backing that faction? That question has not been fully answered in public reporting, but the Obidient movement has accused the APC of orchestrating the internal crisis, calling it a sinister scheme designed to deny Obi a platform. The APC has not confirmed or denied this. What we do know is this. The timing is precise. The leadership tussle escalated at exactly the moment the ADC was gaining momentum, with Kwankwaso's entry, with Obi's formal declaration, and with high-profile defections from the ruling coalition into the ADC. And by the way, there's one more player in this story that almost nobody is talking about. We'll get to that in a few minutes, and when I tell you, it will reframe this entire situation. The electoral maths. In 2023, Obi got 6.1 million votes with a party that had no structure, no money, and no establishment backing. With Atiku's PDP network, Kwankwaso's Kano machinery, and the Obidient movement's digital mobilization combined, the numbers on paper are frightening for the APC. That is precisely why this coalition, if it holds, is the most credible threat Tinubu has faced. And that is also precisely why those who benefit from Tinubu's incumbency have every reason to ensure it does not hold. Here is the irony that nobody wants to say out loud. The Obidient movement, the youth-powered force that wants change, is now protesting to protect an alliance built with old guard politicians like David Mark, Ralph Arigbisola, and Rotimi Amechi. These are not names associated with Nigeria's democratic purity, but Obi's camp has openly defended working with them, saying none have been convicted. That is a significant shift from the "we are different" brand the Obidient built in 2023, and it carries political cost. Now, if what I just laid out surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your take before we get to the part that changes the whole picture. And while you're at it, subscribe to Naija Newsfeed if you haven't yet. This channel is literally the only reason to be on YouTube during this election season. We don't do noise here, we do analysis. Hit that button, it is literally the only way you can help me keep doing this work. Let's zoom out and look at what this actually means for Nigeria as a country, beyond the personalities, beyond the politics. First, the democratic question. Nigeria has been running multi-party democracy since 1999. But since 2015, one party, the APC, has held the presidency, and it has done so while the opposition has repeatedly fractured itself from within. If the ADC coalition collapses before a candidate is even nominated, that is the third consecutive opposition collapse heading into a presidential election. At what point does that pattern stop being a coincidence and start being a systemic problem? That is the question Nigerians need to sit with. Second, the INEC credibility question. The Obidient movement demanded the resignation of INEC chairman Professor Joash Amopitan, who replaced Mahamoud Yakub, citing what they called gross abuse of office and failure to uphold the neutrality required of that office. Now, whether or not you agree with the Obedience politics, that accusation against the electoral umpire, if it gains popular traction, corrodes public confidence in the entire 2027 process before a single vote is cast. That is dangerous for everyone, including the APC, because a discredited election legitimizes nothing. Third, the economics of political instability. Nigeria's naira has already been under pressure. Foreign direct investment does not flow into a country where the political direction is unclear. The closer Nigeria gets to 2027 with no credible opposition, the more investors assume incumbent continuity, which, depending on your view of Tinubu's economic direction, either reassures or alarms. But here is where it gets truly interesting internationally, because there are eyes watching this from outside Nigeria that most Nigerians do not know about. The ADC, after INEC delisted its leadership, announced plans to engage foreign envoys and take its case to the international community. Atiku, speaking at the #OccupyINEC protest, explicitly said he hoped the international community would take note of developments in Nigeria's political space. Why does that matter? Because 2027 is not happening in a vacuum. Nigeria is currently in active negotiations with the IMF and the World Bank on debt restructuring and economic reforms. Western governments, particularly the United States and the United Kingdom, have a strategic interest in Nigerian political stability. A credible, competitive election in 2027 signals healthy democracy. A one-party outcome, especially one preceded by visible institutional interference, would draw the kind of statements and potential consequences that affect Nigeria's access to credit lines and investment treaties. The US State Department and the EU electoral observation missions have flagged Nigerian electoral processes before. If INEC's handling of the ADC crisis is seen internationally as deliberate suppression of opposition, expect strongly worded statements, possible targeted sanctions conversations, and a wave of diaspora-driven pressure campaigns, especially from the large Nigerian communities in the United Kingdom and the United States, many of whom were Obidient movement supporters in 2023. Here is the clear I told you we would come back to. INEC chairman Professor Joash Amopitan was appointed by President Tinubu after the 2023 elections. The Obidient movement has said point blank that they believe INEC is no longer neutral. Whether or not that accusation is fair, here is the political reality. The opposition's entire narrative entering 2027 is now about institutional capture. And that narrative, right or wrong, is the most powerful mobilization tool they have. It was the same tool that drove millions to vote in 2023. If it gains the same momentum in 2027, it brings out voters, and voters, not courts, decide elections.
Let's be fair and clear-eyed here, because there are things people are getting wrong on both sides of this story. Misconception 1. The APC is definitely behind the ADC crisis. That is the opposition's preferred narrative. But let's be honest, opposition parties in Nigeria have a long, documented history of destroying themselves without outside help. The LP Abure crisis was real and internal. The PDP has been splitting itself since 2013. The ADC's leadership dispute involves real legal arguments about who actually has the right to run the party, a dispute that started internally. You can believe the APC is exploiting the crisis without believing the APC created it. Misconception 2. Obi is clean and the system is afraid of him. Peter Obi is a credible candidate with a serious track record in governance in Anambra State. But the idea that he is purely an outsider being suppressed misses the reality that Obi has now allied himself with some of the most establishment figures in Nigerian politics. David Mark was Senate President for 8 years under Jonathan. Ralph Aregbesola was a Tinubu ally for years. Rotimi Amaichi was APC's Campaign Director General in 2015 and 2019. These are not anti-establishment figures. The Change Coalition contains significant amounts of the old guard. Misconception 3. The hashtag Occupy INEC protest changes everything. Protests are powerful symbols, but in Nigerian politics, they do not automatically translate to legal victories or electoral momentum. The protest sends a political message, but the ADC's leadership crisis will be resolved in court, and courts in Nigeria move slowly. The real question is whether the Federal High Court rules before the INEC filing deadlines for 2027. If it does not, the protest becomes irrelevant because the platform may be legally unusable regardless of who led it. Earlier, I said nobody is asking the loudest question. Here it is, fully answered. The biggest threat to Peter Obi is not Tinubu, not the APC, and not rigging. It is time. 9 months to the election, his party platform may be legally frozen. His coalition is fractured between 3 presidential ambitions, and the institution that registers him to run is under formal challenge from his own camp. If the court does not rule quickly or rules the wrong way, Obi could arrive at candidate registration time with nowhere to stand, and a protest will not fix that. So what happens next? What are the signals to watch? The Federal High Court ruling is the single most important thing to monitor. If Judge Muram rules in favor of David Mark's NWC, which is the faction Obi is aligned with, the ADC stabilizes and the coalition can proceed. If the court upholds the rival faction, or if the case drags into late 2026, the coalition will face a crisis that no amount of protesting can resolve. Watch for an Obi-Atiku primary showdown. Both men want the ADC presidential ticket. The party is supposed to conduct a primary. That primary, if it happens, will be the real test of whether the coalition can hold. If either man loses and does not accept the outcome, the coalition splits. Historical pattern: Obi left PDP in 2022 rather than contest and lose their primary. That pattern is worth watching very carefully. Watch for defections back to APC. Some of the figures in the ADC coalition, particularly those who were in APC recently, may find their way back if the coalition looks like it is collapsing. Rotimi Amaichi's political trajectory is one to watch closely in this regard. Best case scenario: the Federal High Court rules quickly and clearly in favor of David Mark's NWC. INEC restores recognition. The coalition conducts a legitimate primary. One candidate, most likely Obi, given his electoral numbers, emerges. Kwankwaso delivers the Northwest votes, Atiku's PDP network delivers the Northeast and Middle Belt, and Nigeria has its most genuinely competitive presidential election since 1993. Worst case scenario: the court delays, INEC filing windows pass with the ADC in legal limbo. Obi scrambles to another party platform, his 4th in 4 years, losing credibility and momentum. The Obidient movement fragments, Atiku runs separately, Kwankwaso runs separately, and Tinubu wins by default in a divided field exactly as he won in 2023. So, long-term impact if nothing changes. Nigeria drifts toward the one-party dominance the ADC says it is fighting against, and a generation of young Nigerians who were energized by the 2023 election, who stayed up all night watching results come in, who believed this time was different, walks away from electoral politics permanently. That is the most dangerous outcome of all, and it does not require anyone to steal anything. It just requires the opposition to keep doing what it has always done to itself. Here is the bottom line you need to carry from this video. At the start of this video, I asked you, what if Peter Obi's biggest threat is not Tinubu, not the APC, and not rigging, but the protest happening inside his own coalition? Here is your answer. The hashtag Occupy INEC protest of April 8, 2026 is simultaneously Peter Obi's most powerful display of opposition force and the most visible sign of how fragile that force actually is. He was in the streets of Abuja not because he is winning, but because the platform he needs to win may be slipping away from under him. The threat is not one person. The threat is a combination of things. A court case he did not start, a coalition he cannot fully control, multiple presidential egos he cannot fully manage, an INEC he does not trust, and a political clock that is running. Peter Obi may be Nigeria's most popular opposition figure, but popularity alone has never been enough in Nigerian politics. Structure, timing, and unity are what convert popularity into votes. Right now, all of those things are under stress. The next 60 to 90 days, court ruling, INEC response, and internal ADC primary negotiations will tell us more about the 2027 election than anything else that has happened so far. Watch those three things and come back to this channel when they break, because we will be here breaking it down for you exactly like this. Now I want to hear from you. Drop it in the comments. Do you think the ADC coalition survives? Can Peter Obi hold it together? Or does Nigeria head into 2027 with a fractured opposition again? Let's talk about it below. If this breakdown gave you clarity on what is really going on, do me one favor. Share this video with one person who needs to understand what is happening right now in Nigeria. Not to argue, not to campaign, just to understand. Like the video and subscribe to Naija Newsfeed. I want to be honest with you. Subscribing is literally the only way you can help me keep doing this work. Every subscriber tells YouTube this channel matters, and when this channel matters to YouTube, I can keep making content like this for free, for you, with no agenda and no spin. I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp.